Alright, so I'd like to talk about a couple of villains really that are not really talked about that could be used for the next set of Avengers films. So in chapter 2, they're not Fox villains either. I know the merger with Fox is happening at the moment. It's going to be settled in around 12 to 18 months ish. So I've thought about two villains that are currently with Marvel and Disney that they can use at the moment. That'll tie them over and help them get into the Fox period and give them plenty of time to work with. They kind of link into each other, which is cool. And the stories can interlink over the course of the 3 phases that Marvel will more than likely use to set up the Avengers films. So the first guy I've got is Korvac. Now, just a bit of background, because he's not massively well known. He first appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy Earth 691, and then he appeared in the Avengers issue 167 called the Korvac Saga. He was created by a race called the Badoon. He's half man, half machine, and his backstory is essentially he was a computer technician for the Badoon. The Badoon came and conquered his world and enslaved people essentially, and he was a bit of a prick and sold himself to them. So he was a computer technician for the Badoon on his homeland, and he fell asleep on the job. And as they were making the rounds, they found him and consequently punished him. And that punishment was they cut off the lower half of his body, as in from the hips down, about the belly button. So his legs, his meat and two veg, everything gone. He swore revenge, and the Badoon thought that was that. He'd done his time, taken his punishment, and they were massively mistaken. On the sly, while he was still working as a computer technician for the Badoon, he upgraded the software in his body, and he added a shed load of weapons to his lower half, and then went on a mad psychopathic killing spree and killed everybody. I mean, he massacred everyone. And then he started trying to build a planet, and to power that, he was going to harness the power of a sun and essentially destroy a sun. So then he was fighting with the Guardians of the Galaxy came in, the original Guardians of the Galaxy, slapped him about a bit, and then he ran off. Well, teleported off. When he teleported off, he ended up on Galactus, on one of Galactus's ships, believe it or not. And lucky for him, Galactus wasn't actually about. He was off eating a world somewhere. So he went for a moocher on the ship, and plugged himself into the ship. Once he realised no one was there, he plugged himself into the ship, and he downloaded everything from the ship into himself. And consequently, he gained infinite cosmic power with abilities to control time, space, and energy. Now, in that Guardians of the Galaxy comic, he then heads off to Earth, meets a chick, who happens to be the Collector's daughter. He got really annoyed with the Collector and fired a laser out of his finger or something and killed him. But I would stop the story there, and I would combine it with the Korvac saga in the Avengers. So I would stop it there and then move on to the Korvac saga and basically combine the two stories to make one big Korvac story, which could be done like the Infinity Gauntlet and Endgame are being done. So the Avengers, the Korvac saga, goes a little bit like this. When Korvac, a godlike cyborg from a future Earth, travels through time to restore order to the universe, he winds up in the 20th century, unlucky, and disguises himself as an ordinary man named Michael. He is then pursued by a futuristic team of heroes called the Guardians of the Galaxy, who idolize the Avengers in their time. The two teams confront Michael in his new home of Queens, where a climatic battle takes place. In the end, many of the Avengers are defeated and even killed, a bit temporarily, but Korvac takes it upon himself to commit suicide before things get too out of hand. And that bit's related to a chick that he met. Again, it revolves around women. Well, he met a girl on Earth, became relatively happy, and then lost the plot. And his missus, or the lady in question, kind of saw him and got really upset, and then he got really upset, and then because of the man he'd become, and then killed himself. I mean, he could have gone about things a different way without killing himself, but shit happens. So I would then go back to the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline. Because in the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline, he again commits suicide. Because Galactus comes back to his ship and realises what's happened, susses it out, and he's about to kill Korvac. But because Korvac has gained all these powers, he's able to sense the chain of events that is about to unfold. Because of that, he kills himself. So I would combine the love interest aspect of it, as in the girl catching him and everything, and them both getting really upset. But then I would also integrate the Galactus bit as well. So he kills himself to try and save the lady as well. It's a little bit poetic, I think. It's pretty cool. And that could also lead into Galactus for what would be chapter 3 or phase 7. It'd be phase 7, I believe. So that'd be a nice tie-in for Galactus as well. So I'd have that as essentially what would be the next version of Infinity War / Endgames. And before that, I would have a dude called Hyperion, who's a little bit mental. A bit of backstory. Hyperion is basically Marvel's Superman. He's got all the same powers as Superman. He first appeared in 1969 in the Avengers. He's associated with the Sinister Squadron and the Supreme Squadron, usually working with or for the Grand Master, and has a history of trying to destroy the Earth. He's got a good resume for this villain thing for the Avengers here. Good CV. In the Avengers Assemble cartoon TV show, he worked alongside the Avengers for a couple of seasons, I believe, and then eventually turned on them when his past was revealed. Then that being that he destroyed everyone on his planet who would not obey him. So I would use that storyline specifically, the cartoon one, where he comes from space eventually, and then tries to integrate himself into the Avengers and into human culture, with him trying to eradicate crime, and him basically saying his home planet was destroyed by criminals, and he doesn't want to say that again. And then he obviously gets outed somehow. Probably Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange. I can imagine. No, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange would be a great one to do it, because he's really sarcastic and he can be a bit of a twat. So I totally have him kind of figure him out, and he's quite. He can be a bit suspicious of people, Doctor Strange, you know, especially with the way that Benedict Cumberbatch plays him. I find it really cool. But that could play out over the course of, you know, 2 phases. So phases 4 and 5, this whole storyline could play out, you know, and you could even go as far as using trailers at the end of films to set up Korvac's story. You know, Doctor Strange at the end of his films and at the end of other films as well. Seeing these things, you know, it could definitely happen with the Guardians of the Galaxy as well. At the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy trailers, it could definitely happen. The Guardians of the Galaxy could actually go and they could do the Badoon story in one of their films to set up Korvac as well. So it's more than doable. And I just think Korvac would be a really good lead into Galactus. I think someone as big and monstrous as Galactus, you need quite a big build and quite a big setup. And I just think it'd work better if it did take a bit of time, if there was a good long build for it, you know. And that's all I got. I've had a look through. I've had a good solid look through different sorts of villains that we could use, but a lot of them are tied to Fox essentially, and they're tied to specifically the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four had all the fantastic villains in the Marvel world, and everyone else kind of didn't. So, yeah. So I'm gonna do a separate video on the villains you can use in with Fox, you know, because I think that would be really cool. Yeah. So if I missed anything out, tell us about it. Yeah, and I'll see you in a bit.